sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Empower Dyslexia show and podcast. I'm Rachel Chambers.
And I'm Stephen Yearout.
And we're here to help you be a better informed parent in education. On the show, we'll be discussing dyslexia and related disorders, research, various interventions, special education policy at the state and the federal level. We'll also be interviewing experts in these areas along with people that have had life experiences. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the show.
First, we'd like to introduce ourselves and how dyslexia has impacted our lives and why this podcast is so important to us.
Yes.
So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Stephen Yearout. I'm a systems engineer, parent advocate for children with dyslexia, as well as being dyslexic. Dyslexia has affected my life from a very young age. I grew up in Australia, lived the first 8 years of my life there. School was, from what I remember, school was very difficult there.
Do we have a picture of you?
I think we might.
Oh, is that the Australia one?
That's a picture of me, my dad, and my grandfather. We were back in turnaround. I believe that picture is like second grade.
So cute.
Let's see another picture there, Ziggy. There's a picture, there's a school picture. Anyway, I have vivid vivid memories of getting in trouble in school, just because I played around a lot, especially in elementary school. When we got back here to the United States, it was 1982, 83. I was going into third grade. I thought I was actually going to be going into fourth grade. However, when they did all the testing to find out where they should place me, they said at that point that there was learning deficits. So we knew that there was an issue from third grade forward. Of course, my parents didn't know anything about dyslexia or anything like that. Mm-hmm. The school system that I was in at the time said, well, we understand about dyslexia. We know what it is, but we don't have any programs for it. Some of the other surrounding ISDs do have it. There's private schools that you can go to, but as far as what we can offer you, there's nothing. And so my struggles began. In elementary school, I remember getting spankings every day for not turning in my homework. And
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that it was defiance that I didn't want to turn my homework in. It was probably a little more of being embarrassed, not knowing how to read, not understanding how to do the homework. Of course, that all carried over into having issues and family issues. Fighting with my parents, fighting with my sister. My mom and dad were trying to do any and everything they could to give me help. Mm-hmm. And that was, now being an adult, looking back on that, really, you don't want to regret things, but you do regret that you still play that, what if I would have done this? What if I would have had a little more help? Did I give it my all? Did I really try to help? So that I struggled all the way through middle school. The only reason why school was even somewhat enjoyable for me was football.
Oh,
I was really
There
good
you
at
are.
I was really good at football, and enjoyed sports and excelled. And
that was 5th grade. You're number 63.
yep, right there in the
Playing
middle.
pads. Pad football.
When you accelerate at something like that and it comes so naturally, that was the only thing that was keeping me in school. That and my friends. I mean, still today I've got that really close group of friends, but the no pass no play rule came in. I think it came in effect in '84.
I remember that when Texas did that, because I was in Oklahoma growing up. I remember it being on the news. It came in and went. What time?
I believe it was '84.
84. Okay.
So my 6th grade year. So 7th grade year, I was one of the star football players for the first 6 weeks of every grade, until I decided that I'd had enough of school and decided to drop out in 10th grade. I think I've got a picture there, Ziggy, of right there. Look at that. This is a letter to notify you that your child has at least, what does that say?
4 absences.
4 absences.
In the following courses.
Yeah. So
Is this a truancy letter?
Well,
or no?
today this would be considered a truancy letter, and I'm sure my parents would have been dragged into court multiple times because I hated
You just
school
gave up.
so much. And you want to see what a picture is of a child who's finally given up
Yeah.
and just doesn't care? That's him.
What grade was that?
So that has to be my junior year, because my car keys are sitting there.
Oh yeah, I see. So you've fallen asleep on the desk.
So this is my
At school.
this is my photography class, and my photography teacher takes a picture of me sleeping in his
Oh, that's
class.
from your teacher.
Yeah.
He wanted to make sure you had proof of you falling asleep in class. Maybe.
So Ziggy, put that picture back up for just a second. So you look at this picture and you go, okay, what do you see of this picture? I see the leather binder there with my book, and that just brings back memories of every year my mom would take me, school shopping, and I would want so bad to be so organized and think, okay, this year I'm going to do it. This year I'm going to do all I can do to make, not only myself proud, but my parents proud, my teachers proud. And I would make sure that all my stuff was all in order and ready to go. And within the first week of school, it was just shambles because I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at that young man right there, and it just breaks my heart that he was in that position. I see a very sad, depressed kid right there.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Ziggy. One thing I do have to say, though, my teachers that I had, although they didn't understand how to help me, I can't say from 3rd grade on that I ever had a teacher that didn't like me or, love me, really, and want to help me as much as possible. I mean, they would let me turn in homework anytime. Just to turn in work, just to try to pass.
Yeah.
Right? And if it wasn't for my teachers and coaches, I know I'd have ended up in prison or dead, one of the two. I mean, I know that.
That's where you were. That's where you feel like you were if you wouldn't have had at least somebody trying to help, trying and cared about you.
Right. They all truly cared. I mean, in the conversations they had with my parents, that we love Stephen, we want him to be successful, but we don't know what else to do.
Right.
Right.
Their hands were kind of
So
tied, maybe.
fast forward, I find out that my two boys have dyslexia, and not a lot, although the understanding about dyslexia probably is a little more. And there are programs out there that people are using now. It's more common for kids to get help. Not a lot has changed
I feel the same way.
in 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And to me, is unacceptable. And if I have to stand up here and shout it from the rooftops, you're going to help my kids and you're going to help the other kids. If I have to fight this hard for my kids,
Who's fighting for all of them?
I'm fighting for them too.
Yeah.
We're going to get this change. We're going to get these kids help. They're going to be successful. So that's the reason why advocating for kids in this podcast is so special to me.
Me too. And I will, I'll talk about myself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my story's a little different than Stephen's. Everybody in my family, on my dad's side of my family, has dyslexia or some kind of learning disability. This first picture is of my grandmother and my grandpa. And look at this picture. Okay. And I just adore this picture because don't you think my grandmother looks like a brunette, like a Cyndi Lauper with brown hair?
She does.
I mean, in that picture she does. I mean, it's just hilarious to me. And they just look so happy. This was right after they got married. And so my pa, he was a charismatic guy, was excellent basketball player. He was a all-stater, blue chip for the state of Oklahoma, but he could not read. I mean, he never got above about a third grade reading level. I remember as a kid growing up, I'd be over at their house, and he would be laying in bed reading the paper. And the Ardmorite in the little town of Ardmore, Oklahoma, was only about maybe 10 pages. But it would take him 3 to 4 hours, but he would read it every morning, So he did learn how to read, but he's a very slow reader, and writing, not so great. But that man could play some basketball, you know what I'm saying? So when they got married, they went down to Love County, because the county of Love, and they got married by the Justice of the Peace at Love County, and they went on down to Gainesville, Texas, and there was a fair at Gainesville, and there was a free throw shooting contest, and so he would tell us the story. Actually, grandmother would tell us the story, and he would shoot free throws, and they're like, by about the 100th one in a row that he made, the guys were like, "All right, Jakey," his name was Jake, and just go ahead and sit down already. We're tired of watching you make free throws, and you win the ceramic chicken. Okay, here you go.
Ceramic chicken.
But he was so good at basketball, and that's kind of what pulled him through, And back then they didn't have no pass, no play.
Right.
And so he got a full ride scholarship to the University of Oklahoma. And he played basketball for them for, until the end of the fall semester. And the grades came out, and they said, "Oh, you're failing. See ya." And
so think about if no pass, no play would have been
right
in there.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I know.
I mean, how that would have stifled him.
Affected him. It would have been tremendously a negative impact on him, for sure. And then, so, he went to World War II. He enlisted and went off to the war. And then after the war, he came back and married my grandmother, and my dad came around. And I think there's a picture of my dad. There he is, and
Love the
little
overalls.
sweet little face of my dad. He has dyslexia as well. They didn't know what it was back then, but my grandmother would sit at the table every day after school. My dad, to help him with his reading and writing, and he wasn't able to learn. He didn't learn to read until he was about in 5th grade. And when he did, they were so happy that grandmother and pa bought him at some point these, because he loved history. And once he figured it out, he didn't stop reading. He just read and read and read. And he loved history, so they bought him these big leather-bound, there was like 30 or 40, 50 books, leather-bound history books. And then they bought him like a 3 or 4 foot statue of Abraham Lincoln, like a bronze statue. He still has it to this day in his office. And my grandparents didn't have much money, they really didn't. But they were so proud that he got to where he was reading. And that spurred on my grandmother going off and getting her teaching degree. She dropped out of high school, like I think her sophomore year, and got married, and then got her GED, then helped my dad and realized that teaching was a thing for her, and got her teaching certificate. And then in her 50s, like I was, in middle school, or I don't know, she was in her 50s, she went back and got her master's in education. So my dad figured out, my dad is very successful CPA, very charismatic, but he had the help, and then along came my brother, same thing with him, same thing. 2nd grade, he started struggling really bad. The 2nd grade teacher, I'm sure she didn't mean anything too terrible about it, but she would call him stupid, and he would come home crying. And boy, did that piss my mom off, and he failed the 2nd grade and had to take the 2nd grade again. But my mom and dad, they were so upset with this and didn't understand it. But people had started talking about dyslexia back then. I think it started in the 70s. Mm-hmm. It's this new thing, right? That's what I remember. And here we are in 1985. And so she goes and finds this doctor in Oklahoma City. So they had to drive. We drove up to Oklahoma City, and he got tested. I was there in the waiting room playing with blocks and whatnot, bored, while he was getting his testing. They also did all this allergy testing. Like, he had 50 shots in his back. And I'm like, allergy testing? They thought it might be allergies. And then he had his vision tested. We think, he needs blue overlays and blue glasses. So they did that. They did everything they possibly could.
Did they do EKG, not EKG, what's the EEGs?
No, I don't think they did that.
I remember having a EEG.
Did you?
The stories are so similar.
Yeah.
I remember having allergy testing. And
did you too?
Oh yeah, I remember EEGs and.
So I guess they were just trying to figure it out, right?
Shotgun and trying to figure out what could
causing.
Be. Yeah.
So I'm not really sure if the blue overlays or glasses really helped him too much, but the one thing that really helped him was that this awesome, and there he is. There's my beautiful brother. He's probably about, isn't he cute? He's about 2nd, 3rd grade right there in that picture. But the person that really helped him was his tutor after school. He started getting tutoring from 2nd grade, the 2nd time around, through about 4th or 5th grade. He'd go after school every day with these 2 or 3 other kids. And his teacher, the only one I think that we had maybe in Ardmore or at least in that elementary school, and she knew what dyslexia was. And she tutored these boys. They were all boys in his class. And her name was Sandy Thompson. She taught me 4th grade, but she tutored my brother. And she pulled him right up out of there. And now he's a dentist. He was a good basketball player too. But now he's a dentist, and he's done really good. So I think that's the key. As long as you have someone to help pull you up out of that and believe in you, then, really anything is possible. We're all really smart people. That's the thing, and then I think there's one picture of all of us, Ziggy, like, and then the jury's still out on me. There's Pa and my dad, my brother and me. I think that was Christmas.
Was that in Oklahoma?
Yeah, that was at my grandmother and Pa's house.
So I guess Oklahoma didn't have the big hair like we did here in Texas.
Oh, we did. That wasn't until, well, I could never sport the big hair. My hair doesn't do that very well. I was shunned by that, because of that.
It's just amazing to me how, speaking to different people that are dyslexic around and hearing their stories, how similar and almost verbatim
Yes.
the stories are. And it doesn't matter which continent you're on. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter when you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
The stories are so similar.
Yeah, and why? And that's my thing. So this will probably lead us into their next. Both of us, we don't feel like much has changed. Like for me, I don't feel like much has changed since the 1980s.
But with saying that, I don't want to discount the work that has
There has
gone
been
on.
more. Yes, research.
And I don't want to discount the people that, truly care about our dyslexic kids and want to give the most help that there is. And there's been change. We're not saying that. But when you look at talking to kids and parents today and the struggles that they're going
There's
through,
still that
that's the reason
struggle.
why we're saying that struggle hasn't been alleviated.
That's what I was referring to, is that struggle. The struggle is still there. The struggle to get services, the intervention, to get the diagnosis, to get help,
Just the simple help. And
or to even know what it is. It's amazing to me that there's so many people out there, even though like 20%, 15 to 20%,
1 in 5.
1 in 5, like your T-shirt
Like my
says,
T-shirt, 1 in 5.
that more people aren't aware, that they don't know, or they've never heard of it, or
It's you just switch the numbers and letters backwards, right?
B's and B's,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, we have a segment called The Most Ridiculous. This segment is the most ridiculous things that Rachel and I hear when we go around speaking to people about dyslexia.
okay,
So what we're going to do here is we've written down some of the most ridiculous things that we've heard.
yes,
We've placed them in this bowl. We're going to pull them out randomly and read them and kind of discuss a little bit about them.
okay, you go first.
All right.
I folded them.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard this one.
Okay,
Dyslexia is not real.
right, yeah, okay.
Let me start with saying I'm here to tell you, and we'll debate anybody about this. Dyslexia is real. It is a real struggle.
Why do people
But-
say it's not real? I mean,
But here's this is of course this is my opinion, but the reason why I believe people say it's not real, you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about your family, because the kids or the people that they're dealing with are so intelligent
yes,
in other areas other than where they're struggling. You can't look at a dyslexic and go, "Oh yeah, you're dyslexic."
I can tell.
He's got that.
It's written on your forehead.
You got that dyslexic look.
You've got the look about you.
Yeah. So it is hard to understand when you're looking at somebody and you're talking to them and they're very charismatic. Charismatic. See, there's my
Close enough.
My dyslexia is acting up.
Close enough.
So when you look at them and you go, you don't look any different.
Yeah.
You don't act any different.
You seem smart,
You seem it.
right?
But-
You seem smart.
I think that's the big thing, and I think that's why we have so many people that don't believe it's real and don't want to help. I say don't want to help. I hate saying that.
Maybe don't know how to help.
Don't understand how much the help is needed.
Yeah,
Maybe
and how
that's-
much it helps.
Right. Maybe
How
that's
much
maybe that's the right
the
way.
interventions truly help, and we will talk about that a little bit later too.
Right.
Oh, okay. So this is just going on about what we were just saying, but you're so smart. You don't look like you have a learning disability. You know, you're so smart. I mean,
So-
right? You
so-
seem smart.
So what does having a learning disability look like?
I don't know.
You know, to hear,
I don't know.
and I've had that very comment said to me in 504 meetings. I just, you know, you're just speechless. You're like,
About your kids?
yeah.
Okay. But they're so smart. They
Yeah,
don't
but
look
they're
like-
so smart. Well, no kidding, they're so smart. That's why I'm here. That's
Yeah.
why I'm fighting to get them the help.
Yeah.
Why you don't understand why something like that would ever leave your mouth. Mm-hmm. All right, so
Let's do another one.
Let's do
Let's do
another
maybe two more?
yeah. This one was said to me all during school.
Ooh, okay.
You're just lazy, try harder.
Right?
If you only knew how hard I tried. If you only knew the anxiety that you put yourself through, and the trying to think of the word, the self abuse, because you're
Yeah,
mentally
you put yourself down like you're
Yeah.
not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough over and over and
yeah,
over
yeah,
again.
yeah. You're not going to be able to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are just being lazy.
Yeah.
You start
I'm not
question-
trying hard enough.
You start questioning yourself, which leads into the depression and the anxiety and
Most definitely.
and the self-worth.
Yeah.
It's amazing that even when they know that you have that learning disability, that that those words would still come out of somebody's mouth.
They still do. I've heard it too.
All right.
Okay, last one. Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to be dyslexic. I mean, I was under the impression like once you have it, you kind of always have it.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's just who you are. You might have learned your coping mechanism. You've gone through your reading intervention, and now you can read and write and decode, and maybe are better at math than you were. But it's not one of those things that you grow out of. You maybe, like I said, you learn your coping, your skill sets, but you still deal with it on a daily basis.
Yeah, you're born with it and you die with it. I mean, there's no getting rid of it. There's no curing it.
I have brown hair.
Yeah.
I could dye it if I wanted to, but no, I still have brown hair at the roots.
Yeah, it's.
I was born with it.
So
Right.
we will during our podcast we'll continue to share some of the most ridiculous things that we hear.
And try to put those little myths,
Well, we
try to clear up the myths that we sometimes hear.
we want to have a little bit of sense of humor and poke fun at it
Yeah.
a little bit, and we're doing this so if you catch yourself saying these things, maybe you go, maybe I don't say that.
Yeah.
Maybe I ought to think.
Maybe that's hurtful.
Yeah.
Maybe they are trying, the best they know how. Or let me help them.
Am I helping them correctly?
Yeah. How can I help them better? Maybe there is a problem. Maybe we need to figure this out more.
Right.
So each kid is different. So why don't we go into the video?
I have to say, this when you asked me to help you with this PSA, I was honored to start with.
Well, thank you.
And when I saw the finished project, I have to tell you, you did an amazing job on this, and I really hope that this reaches out to any of the children that are going through this right now.
Well, my idea was to do it. I mean, my whole reason for doing it is because I wanted to raise awareness, and my heart breaks for these kids, and my kids also. I have 2 children, and they both have learning differences, and it's been a struggle. I mean, we are now just seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but what about all the other kids? What about all the other kids that are maybe in foster care, or their parents aren't as involved, or because they're working 3 jobs to put food on the table? What about those kids? Who's going to help them? We need to raise awareness. We need to get the word out there, and so that's what spurred me to do this. And I had some family and friends that all felt the same way and were helpful. So I wrote. Well, Stephen, you helped me write some of it. Directed, edited, produced this public service announcement. So here we go, if we're ready, Ziggy.
Take it away.
If you teach me to read, I will have more self-confidence.
I will suffer less depression.
I'll be less likely to abuse drugs and drop out of school. If you teach me to read,
Teach us to read.
Teach us to read.
I'll learn that I'm not a failure and I can do it.
I'll be less likely
I'll be less likely
I will be less likely
to go to prison.
to go to prison.
Go to prison.
Teach us to read.
Please teach us to read.
Okay, so that was my public service announcement. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, please share it. I would love for it to just have a life of its own. So, okay, so we're moving on. So what is dyslexia? That's what we're going to talk about next. So listen closely, folks. This is a long definition, and so bear with me. It's from the International Dyslexia Association, which is where all these dyslexic experts get together worldwide and come together, and they wrote this definition. So they say dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is a neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in their phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. So that means they're smart. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge.
So, to put that in simple terms,
Yeah, it's long.
where we can all understand it, it's a disorder that you have difficulty in learning reading, writing, understanding symbols, that type of thing. But again, I want to stress that it has nothing to do with your intelligence level.
Right.
So it's I can't stress that enough.
Yes, these kids are smart. They're smart.
Absolutely.
They just need a little help learning how to read. Okay, so now that we got the big long definition out of the way, I want to bring up some other pictures. It has really nothing to do with dyslexia and learning differences, disabilities, but I thought it was important to our history. So this guy right here is Johannes Gutenberg. He was a 15th century German inventor. His invention of the printing press was one of the most revolutionary inventions ever made and impacted our world tremendously by mass producing books. and therefore creating a mass dissemination of knowledge to everyone. So back in the day, before the printing press, books were really hard to come by and very expensive. And so only the uber elite got to learn how to read.
Well, they used to keep them locked up. They used to keep all the books. Yeah, they used to keep all the books and Bibles and manuscripts and stuff like that. They used to keep all that locked up, and only certain people was able to go in and view it.
Well, that would be called our elite wealthy class. And the other socioeconomic class of the time was the illiterate poor working class. So once, if you could put a picture of the printing press up there, of the illiterate, or not illiterate, the literate few were the Chinese monks as well. They didn't use this machine. They used a method called block printing, and they did that on sheets of paper. But they're very responsible for the Chinese history and among recording that Chinese history.
I think the Japanese had.
I think there's some other groups of people that also did this. But that printing press it mass produced information. It's kind of like the invention was almost as important as, like, say, the internet, because we have information at our fingertips now, and back then people actually just had information that they could come in contact with.
It was all verbally
back then
down.
It was passed down verbally, but then when the books came along and said, oh, well, this is what history is here, and this is what science is for right now, and in the 15th century, and this is what English literature is,
So what you're saying is, if you had an issue reading, there was a problem.
Exactly. So with the cool new printing press, the price of books went down, and it kind of left us, that 20% of the population, at a very disadvantage, whereas we'd never been treated differently until that time.
Well, back then you didn't necessarily have to read a book to know how to farm, to raise cattle, to build a house, to build a building.
A goldsmith.
Those trade type jobs where, in creativity, because you had to be creative to be a blacksmith, to design something and build it. And, same thing with inventors and entrepreneurs, and that's where dyslexics, they thrive in those areas. So, when we add that piece of it, and they can't read, well, now you've taken that population and you go, well, you're not as smart as what you thought you were.
Right.
To add something in there, kind of go off script, I just read this guy did a report for school. It kind of talks about that same subject, where he was talking about the invention of the printing press, or the what do you say, dissemination of books.
Yeah, mass
that were out there.
dissemination of knowledge in books.
That caused, I'm paraphrasing here, basically a social disability, because you took, and now reading and writing is socially, I don't even know what the word would be. It's a must.
Yes.
In our society.
To be worth something, you have to
be able to read, write, do math.
Yes. If you're going to be considered
intelligent
in our society and successful.
Right.
I mean, reading and writing is a measurement of success.
So his argument in this paper was that society really has caused this group of people to have a disability. It was a very interesting argument, or point of view. So anyway.
That's, okay, so back, am I still doing history? Okay. I've missed one.
So we talked about the printing press.
Yes. I think, there we go. So, we were going to talk about one other thing.
So, this one's kind of near and dear to my heart, because I've heard it so many times in school. And it's funny because I heard it a couple of days ago on Facebook. Somebody made the comment. Classrooms all over the world start teaching these children, how to read and write. But we know that all these children, they learn differently. They all have learning differences, or styles, right?
We are all neurodiverse. That is the catchword right now.
Yeah. So when we look at what was going on in the 1600s, if you weren't able to learn like everybody else, and you were having struggling with reading and writing, comprehension, those type of things, they thought of you as stupid, and they came up with the dunce hat. I had no idea that the dunce hat had been around since the mid 1600s. Keep that up there for just a second, Ziggy. So I laughed when I saw this, laugh and kind of cry when I see this photo. I will be good. And he writes it, I don't know, however many times. Back when I was telling the story about being in third grade and getting spankings, once they figured out that the spankings wouldn't help, if I didn't turn my homework in, they would sit me in the cafeteria during school, and I would write sentences. So when I saw this, pictures and images like this just bring back floods of memories of
Not being good enough, basically.
Yeah. It's so sad to me. They basically shame these kids, sitting them in the front of the room with a dunce hat on. And that, what's crazy is that dunce hat image or dunce hat is still known and used today. Although it's
I don't think they use
it's
it in
not
classrooms.
well no it's not it's not politically correct to say, well, I'm going to put the dunce hat. Well, it's less politically correct to say, hey, you're stupid or you're lazy. But they could still say, do I need to get the dunce hat? Because not so many people understand what the ramification or where that actually came from. So let me read the Oxford Dictionary definition of dunce: a symbol for a fool or dim-witted. So when you look at that through the lens of a dyslexic, that's who they're talking about.
I think so. When I read that, I was like, geez. That's my family they're talking about.
Right.
Those are my kids they're talking about. And my kids aren't stupid. They just aren't,
You call my kids...
No, I mean, no one deserves to be wearing a dunce hat and sat in the corner, and punished. I don't think like that. I think it's just not cool.
So the dunce hat, not imagery, but using dunce hat type shaming of children really fell out of favor here in the United States in the 1960s.
I believe that's correct.
And 70s when, the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, was passed. IDEA was passed. And then they started understanding more or looking into, not that I don't think they understood it. I think they were forced to look into how do we help this group of people more, right? So...
and that was a very important time.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing that finally they decided to change, and we're starting to see that more and more now.
Yeah.
Slowly. But I was told just recently that this is a big ship, and it takes a long time to turn.
Sure.
And so my comment back was, I was diagnosed in 1983. It's now 2000. Well, now it's 2019. How long does it take to turn the ship?
Yeah.
How long do you need? How many children have been failed from? I mean, just take my example. How many kids have been failed from 83 to 2019?
staggering numbers,
I mean,
I'm sure.
it makes you want to cry.
Yeah. We're going to get to some of that stuff in some other shows of where those kids are now and the ones that have been helped versus the ones that have have basically been forgotten. We'll talk to some experts on that for sure. That's one area that I'm very passionate about, as are you. I know, talking to you, of like if you give up hope on these kids.
I mean, the kids,
And they make some wrong choices, and they go, they don't fare well. And working where I work with kids, I see these kids of all socioeconomic classes, like rich, poor, middle class, and they are all smart. They are all capable. They are all highly capable of performing well and doing well in our society. And they are, some of them have a lot of obstacles to climb, and some have more than others, and we can't forget about them, because educating all of us is going to make our society better. It's going to make our communities better. It's going to make our country better. It'll make our world better.
right. Well, you talked about, you were just saying how not to give up on those kids. These kids have to have somebody in their corner, because a lot of them have already given up on themselves. So they have to have that support to pick them up off the ground and go, hey, come on, man, we're gonna make it through this.
Yeah.
And
And that's the change I want to see. I want that support for them, because if you think about it, you go into a classroom every day and you're told every day, or you feel when you go into that classroom, that you are not good enough. You are the worst reader in the classroom. And it's every day, it adds up. And by the end of that year, that kid is feeling so sad in many cases. And if they don't have, like, if they aren't like my grandpa, who was really great in basketball, or if they don't have something they're really good at and say, well, I may not be good at reading or writing or whatever, but I've got this. But some of the kids don't even have that.
Right.
And they just feel bad about themselves. And it just compiles upon them where they don't want to go to school anymore.
Right.
Why would you, if it makes you feel bad all the time?
Right. Well, you kind of go off script a little bit more. I want to tell you, I want to say this to the kids that are out there struggling. You may not feel like you have anybody in your corner. You may feel like you aren't good enough. Let me say this, and let me say it loud. I love you. I care for you, and I'm here for you, and I want to help you succeed. That is what we're here for. If you need help, please let us know.
Yes, I agree. So any of you kids out there listening,
Or parents.
Or parents, or teachers, or educators, we're here to help. Like we said, we're here to help you be a better partner in education.
But in the partner in education, that piece is huge, because it is a partnership. It is a partnership between the school, the ISD level, the administrative level, the actual campus level, the teachers, the administrators at the campus, the parents,
Parents are part of
and
that
the
team.
student
Yep.
are all part of this team to make you successful. And I truly don't believe that there are schools out there with sinister, motives that don't want to, I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that. I think a lot of it is they don't understand how important that help is.
And maybe they're not given the resources.
And a lot of them aren't given the resources.
Yeah.
They're not given that funding. They're not given the proper education.
They're not allowed to
help
hire
us.
the teachers that can make a difference.
So, please let us know if we can help, or we can get you the right help, or whatever we need.
Yes.
So, anyway, sorry about that. That's just kind of a
moment.
soapbox, a little bit of dyslexia moment that I felt like we needed to say.
Okay.
Ziggy, we put up picture 16, please. This gentleman right here, Mr. Kuzman,
Kuzma.
Adolf Kuzman. He is the one that actually termed the word blindness. He came up with a concept of word blindness. He's a neurologist from Germany, and back in 1887, he noticed that a lot of his patients were not able to read properly and placed words in the wrong order. So he ended up calling this thing word blindness.
Well, and he's also worked a lot with diabetics. So for all of our medical people out there, Kussmaul's respirations, this is him. This is the gentleman who also discovered word blindness.
That's pretty interesting
Yeah.
that he discovered word blindness and worked with diabetics.
He did a lot of work.
Yeah.
Pretty cool guy.
So this was in 1887. About 10 years later, Rudolf Berlin, a German ophthalmologist, he termed or coined the phrase dyslexia. And in the Greek, dyslexia means difficulties with words. So we can thank Rudolf Berlin for giving us our title.
Our term, our
tri-
diagnosis word.
Dyslexia wouldn't be greatly used as the term for what we were dealing with until much later. We had William Pringle Morgan and Dr. James Hinchelwood. Yes. Hinchelwood. Dr. Morgan was a general practitioner, and Dr. James Hinchelwood was an ophthalmologist. They were working together, and they figured out that, or they came up with the idea that dyslexia was congenital, meaning you were born with it.
Definitely.
And as we all know, you're definitely born with it, and if you have dyslexia, it's probably in your family somewhere.
Right.
But what they ended up saying was that this was a defect of your left side of your brain that causes problems with visual processing.
Gotcha.
So we can take this a step further. Let's
So back in 1925, we're going to skip a few years ahead.
Yeah.
1925 was a big year because this was the first year. Well, I guess it was a little bit after 1925, but the first reading intervention was created. So by two people, a neuropsychiatrist from Iowa. This is by the name of this is Dr. Samuel T. Orton. He believed the condition did not stem directly from visual deficits, but was actually caused by failure to establish hemispheric dominance in the brain. He also later worked with psychologist and educator Anna Gillingham to develop a multisensory educational intervention which successfully taught students to read who were having problems with reading.
How about that?
So we have intervention, we have help. And so this method is called the OrtonGillingham method, and it's still used today and highly regarded. So we have them to thank for that. And there's been a lot of other interventions that have come through that have proven to be successful. And we'll talk about more of those in later shows. But let's skip ahead to the 1970s. There were some doctors that thought dyslexia was a deficit in phonological processing, meaning that people had difficulty in associating the sound with the actual letter symbol, like we discussed earlier. Once students were taught the phonological awareness and broke words down into phonemes, which we will talk more later. Phonemes are just basically, this is a bad definition, but basically words that are broken down, like, I'll say disability, disable, or cat. We'll have an expert on to talk more about that. That's out of my wheelhouse. But when they break them down into phonemes, they start decoding, and their skills improved, and they start to read. So this is another intervention. And then, okay, like in the 1980s and 1990s, autopsies of the brains were performed on people with dyslexia, and also they had, the neurotypical brains that they performed these autopsies on, and they found that there was no asymmetry, meaning that we had both areas of the brain looked the same size as the normal person. So
we didn't have half a brain.
We didn't have half a brain. So that was kind of nice to know. And then, but there was a difference. There was an anatomical difference in the language center of the brain, which is the left middle frontal gyrus. So that was really interesting research, I thought. And they started doing more research in the 2000s, and here's a picture of that. And this is when research, I thought, for me, got really, really interesting, because we have pictures of it. These are functional MRIs.
Let me take a look at that. You look at the difference in the two, the top being the normal reader. And
Yes.
look at where the lights are lit up.
Yeah, we can actually see what's being used and what's not being used. The top picture is, like you said, of a normal reader, and they have strong activity on the left side. The left side of their brain.
The language processing side.
Yes, and then so the patterns they found, or I'm sorry, they found, sorry, I'm stumbling. They found learning to read is associated with two patterns of change in the brain. This is while learning to read. And so I'm going to read this because these are big words. They found increased activity in the left hemisphere, middle temporal and inferior frontal gyrus. So you have increased activity in that area when you're starting to learn to read. This is for everybody. And decreased activity in the right inferotemporal cortical areas. Okay, those are the last of my big words for today, I think. So if we go on to the next picture, thank you, Ziggy. This is another functional MRI. The first picture of a kid that learns to read in a typical manner, like we'll just say normal. The second picture is of a dyslexic child's brain.
Look at
okay?
the blue circle. There's absolutely nothing.
Nothing. And then, so this is what totally wows me, okay? Because the third picture is a kid that has dyslexia, but after he or she has gone through remediation or an intervention. I mean, look, the whole left side of their brain is lit up so much. And that just proves that our brains are really, really fascinating organs, and there's so much we don't know about the brain.
So, and again,
So that gives me hope.
With this picture, you still got to, Ziggy, put that back up for just a second. You still got to see the typical reading child in the lights that they have lit up there. And even with remediation, this goes back to what we were saying earlier, that dyslexia is not curable, but we can remediate it. We can give you the skills to help.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's proof positive right there.
Yeah, it's so
we
cool.
We need the help.
We need the help, and once we get the help, look at that. That's what our brains look like now. So it's just really cool.
Thank you, Ziggy.
Well, I think we're on to the science part.
On to the science part.
Of dyslexia. We've done our history, our research, and now we're down to the science.
This is kind of my wheelhouse since I'm a systems engineer, network architect. So let's go ahead and put that picture back up, Ziggy. So we look at the computer board there. The computer board is much like our brains, that we have a bunch of mini columns that are all interconnected by cables or wires, or however you want to kind of describe it. In each of these mini columns, they have about 100 neutrons, give or take.
Neurons.
Neurons. Give or take, the cables that connects these together are the axons. So, in the computer world, if we're looking at this computer board, all the little green lines, those are the axons, and they're going to the chips that are placed on the board to do all the computing, the things that you're asking the computer to do, right? So the brain has many of these circuit boards, much like this, that help process information and perform daily tasks, right? Now, not all the circuit boards are alike, right? We're all different.
There's that word, neurodiverse. We're neurodiverse people, every single one of us.
Every one of us. So when we look at these circuit boards, like I said, all of them are different. We're all different. So like you said, the neurodiversity or the neurodiverse. Some circuit boards may have these mini columns that are closer together.
Right.
And that's typical of somebody with autism. And because those mini columns are closer together, they're able to do very detailed work because it's a very fast connection, right? Typically in the dyslexic brain, these mini columns are further apart, giving us the great ability to be big picture thinkers, to be able to think outside the box.
It's like we have a wide angle camera lens.
Very wide.
Yeah,
And I tell this story all the time when I talk to kids, and when I hear that they have dyslexia, I ask them, one of the questions I ask them, I said, so are you the type of person that could take a box of Legos and I tell you to build me X out of the box? Do you have to have the instructions or can you build it? And almost every one of them say, oh, I can build that.
Yeah.
They don't have to have the instructions. They
Right.
get to see from a 10,000 foot level, and they know how everything works and where it all goes. That's the reason why dyslexics make great entrepreneurs and engineers.
Creative
types.
Arts.
They're great in the arts. They're great in sports. They're
Architecture.
So, like I said, we're outside the box thinkers, but all of that comes with a disadvantage. Our disadvantages that we give up. I say give up.
We just have a
we
disadvantage.
suffer with the language piece of this. And that's why we need this extra help. We need the intervention that we're fighting so hard for. So, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking, it's a friend of mine who's actually a teacher, and he was talking about, how do I teach a dyslexic child? And one of the things he was saying was, I go over it in class and this, that, and the other, and I go, okay, well, how many times do you go over it? Well, I go over it a couple of times, and I go, okay, well, for a neurotypical child, or as most people would call it, a normal child.
Normal child.
Yeah, it may take 1 or 2 times for you to go over it and they got it. For dyslexic, it may take 5 times. It may take 10 times.
Well, they say that dyslexic children, or dyslexic people, I should say, it takes them 5 times. They have to work, I should say, 5 times harder than the normal, typical child person when it comes to reading and decoding and stuff like that. So that's just the struggle. That's the struggle with having many columns and neurons that are spaced further apart. And it takes a little bit longer for the processing sometimes, but if you work at it and you keep working at it, you will get it. Just don't give up.
You talk about it takes a little bit longer. But I will say this. Of the dyslexic people that I know, and I know quite a few, it may take them a little bit longer.
Not that much longer, but yeah.
It may take them a little bit longer to process it, but once they process it, they got it.
They got it.
It's like the elephant's memory. They don't forget. They will not forget once they learn it, they got it.
They got it. I know.
So let's help these kids.
Okay, so these are some things that we want you guys to check out, okay? So things to check out. If you're in our viewers or listeners in our North Texas area, there is, it's called Dyslexia New Year event. And they're having it at the Naaman Forest High School in Garland, Texas.
This is being put on by Garland Independent School District.
Okay, GISD.
Yes.
And this is going to be on Monday, January 14th. Doors open at 5. Sessions start between 6 and 8, or run between 6 and 8. And it's a free event open to the public.
I believe that they're going to do. Have you been to a dyslexia experience before? I believe they're going to be doing the
I've been to
dyslexia
several.
experience. So
Well, we hope to have that on our show too.
really quick story there. Garland did their first dyslexia experience, and I think I'm going to be smart and I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to drag my wife that's not dyslexic, and my kids who 2 of them are and one of them isn't. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go to this, and I'm going to show her what it's like to be dyslexic. Mm-hmm. So we go in there, and you go from station to station, and they kind of describe what's going on in the dyslexic's mind in a classroom setting, right? Mm-hmm. Literally, after the second session, I was so stressed out. I looked at my wife. I said, "I gotta get out of here.
Oh no!
I cannot sit in here and listen to this because it makes me want to punch somebody." I was so aggravated because it brought back all those feelings.
Yeah, no.
And I didn't think that I was going to get anything out of it.
Isn't it weird to like sit there and go, oh my gosh, that's my brain, what they're saying and what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing everybody talking and I can't focus, and I mean, maybe I have ADHD too, but
they're purposely doing this to make you feel like what it feels like to be dyslexic. And I was angry that these people were talking to these other people that way, and
it was anxiety inducing for sure, but in a good way, because it allows you to feel what they feel or experience what they experience at school. And
listening to my wife talk about her schooling, she was very intelligent, always made A's, and was really good in school. Mm-hmm. And to watch her go through,
that's my husband.
To watch her go through this, and she say, I didn't realize that you were dealing with that, or I didn't realize that you were into this. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
And listening to those comments, if you get the chance to go to a dyslexia experience, dyslexic or not, I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try hard to get it on the show.
Absolutely.
Because it's super cool.
So what else is coming up?
Okay, so another big important thing, huge, is the Dyslexia Summit. It's like the Texas Dyslexia Summit. It's this Saturday.
We are so excited about this.
We're going to be attending. It's January 12th in Austin at the LBJ Auditorium on the University of Texas campus. It starts at 10:30. My husband would be so proud. 10:30 in the morning until 6:30 at night. This is also free and open to the public. And our very own Stephen Yearout will be one of the guests for the parent advocate panel. So we will be there. When we may have we're going to try to see what we can, have some tips to bring back after our journey there and back to share with you guys on our show.
Yeah, we want to see what the latest and greatest that's out there. We're going to try to speak to some of our representatives while we're there, and see if we can understand what's on the agenda to help us.
The legislative agenda?
Yeah, the legislative agenda to help us.
Yeah, go Texas.
That's right.
Okay, and the last thing I want y'all to know about, which is really cool, is 3dudesdesign.com. And they're those cute kids. It's a t-shirt company inspired by their 3 amazing boys. You'll be sure to find comfortable, custom designed t-shirts for the dyslexic person in your life, along with other t-shirt designs. So check out 3dudesdesign.com.
Well, I hope that you've enjoyed our first podcast.
Yeah.
It was it's exciting.
It's exciting. We had a lot of information to share with you guys today.
Was nervous and whatnot, but I mean, I think this went really well, and hopefully we will we bring something to the table and help you or your children with this.
Yeah.
Please join us next week. Our next week's topic is Houston, we have a problem.
We have a problem.
So we're going to be talking, because we know that there's a problem, what do we do next? Okay, you're dyslexic. Okay, so what's next? So please tune in next week.
We're going to have Dr. Housen on to help explain what are the next steps to take.
I can't wait to talk to him.
I can't either. He is a brilliant man. He knows a lot. He knows his stuff. So I'm glad he's going to be on our show.
Absolutely. Well,
All right.
thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Today's podcast has been sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Our dedicated team is committed to delivering quality and compassionate care to generations of children in North Texas. PAD has locations in Dallas and in Plano and is open 7 days a week.